Welcome to our introduction to the basics of ecology. In this presentation, we'll be going over some of the basic terms and concepts of the subject ecology. A branch of biology that developed from natural history is called ecology. Definition: ecology is the study of how living organisms, the biotic, interact with each other and with their non-living abiotic environment. In modern ecological research, ecologists use both qualitative and quantitative research. Qualitative information is obtained by observing out in the field, watching, seeing where they live and they nest and what their activities are. They obtain quantitative data by actually going out and measuring water quality, numbers of eggs hatched, things like that out in the field. So they use both qualitative and quantitative measurements to form their research. The biosphere is the portion of the Earth that supports living things. It extends high up into the atmosphere to the very bottom of the ocean. Generally speaking, nice round numbers, 6 miles above and 6 miles below the Earth's surface is what's considered the biosphere. The biosphere, again the living portion of the Earth, supports a very diverse group of organisms in a wide range of climates, from the driest deserts to the oceans. Living things are affected by both physical and non-living environment and by their living things. The non-living environment are called the abiotic factors. Abiotic factors are parts of an organism's environment. Examples of the abiotic factors could be air currents, temperature, moisture, light, soil, heat. Abiotic factors have obvious effects on living things and often determine which species can survive in a particular environment. A creature that is adapted to living in a very moist rainforest would probably have a very difficult time living in a very dry desert, and of course the vice versa. The living environment is called the biotic factors. Biotic factors are all the living organisms that inhabit an environment: plant, animal, bacteria, fungus, all those things. An important concept in ecology is that living organisms affect other living organisms. Squirrels might compete with chipmunks, different kinds of squirrels. They're all interrelated. The drop of a population of chipmunks may mean that the hawks are feeding more on rabbits and squirrels. So all organisms depend on each other directly or indirectly for food, shelter, reproduction, protection. Starting with one of the more broader general areas of ecology, we have the ecosystem. This is population of plants and animals that interact with each other in a given area and with their abiotic components of that area. The living and the non-living interact in an ecosystem. So all of the animals, plants, and everything along with the soil, water, and air. There are two major types of ecosystems: terrestrial ecosystems and aquatic ecosystems. Moving down the listings, we come under ecosystems to a community, which are interacting populations in a certain area at a certain time. These are all the living parts of an ecosystem. So in a community, we just have the living populations: trees, grass, chipmunks, squirrels, deer. We're in a community, we're not considering the abiotic. The next would be to consider a population. It's a group of organisms of all the same species which live and interbreed in the same area at the same time. Now, you really wouldn't call the population maybe the deer in all of the state of Wisconsin. You would say maybe in the central part of Wisconsin there's a group of woodlots where the deer tend to move back and forth. Yes, there's nothing stopping a deer from the southern part of the state going to the northern part of the state. But the animals within a certain woodlot or a certain area, a certain pond, would be considered a population. And then finally we get down to the base level, the organism, an individual living in that population, made up of cells, uses energy, responds to its environment, grows and develops, reproduces. A single individual in that population may or may not have traits that are conducive to that ecosystem, to that area, or better or worse traits. That's where the beginning of survival of the fittest really becomes apparent. The organisms within an ecosystem will live in a habitat, a place where this organism lives out its life, including food, water, shelter. A wood, like I was saying, a woodlot, a meadow would be a habitat. Several species may share a habitat: the water, the shelter, food, and other resources of that habitat are often obtained and used in different ways. Some birds feed up; they will walk up the bark of the trunk of a tree, feeding only on insects that they see up and under the bark. Other birds will feed down and will only eat the insects that are tucked in under the top of chunks of bark. They're utilizing the same habitat but in different ways. A niche is the special role a species has in that environment, how it meets its needs with food, water, shelter, how it feeds. It's its special way that it survives in that environment. As we just mentioned, a niche is a species' special area that it lives, how it does its job, how it survives, including all of its interactions with the biotic and abiotic parts. Two different species cannot occupy the same niche in the same ecosystem at the same time. Therefore, they're competing to share the resources. The survival of the fittest, again, starts here. You may see gray squirrels and red squirrels in a woodlot, but because the gray squirrels are predominantly the acorn gatherers and the red squirrels are predominantly more the pine seed gatherers, there'll be pines and oak trees in this ecosystem. So they're squirrels, but they're not occupying the same niche. They're not competing with each other. All of this interaction can bring up competition. Members of the same ecosystem and even the same population may compete with each other for food, resources, water. Interest-specific competition is when members of the same species are vying for the same resources. Gray squirrels might quarrel over the gathering of acorns. One might try to drive one away. Interspecific competition is between different members of different species. In this case, you might have gray squirrels and fox squirrels battling for the same food source. Predators may be battling for the same prey, hawks and foxes. This gives rise to two more ecological terms: opportunistic and specialist. Opportunistics feed on different things and live in different areas. They take advantage of whatever opportunities are there to stay alive. Fox might eat mice, small rabbits, chipmunks, and if one of the populations that it normally feeds on drops, it will feed more heavily than on another population. Specialists are ones that feed on very narrow band of things, and they can only live in specific habitats only. A classic example of that is the koala bear must eat eucalyptus. The pandas have to eat a certain kind of cane. They've developed into a very specific food source, and if that food source is eliminated, they'll be in trouble. The monarch butterfly lays its eggs on milkweed plants. If too many milkweed plants are cut down by lawnmowers and civilization, the monarch butterflies have a very hard time finding a place to breed. Another ecological strategy are the R versus K population strategies. The R strategists have many offspring with very little or no parental care. Only a small percentage make it to adulthood, but if they have enough, if they lay enough eggs or they have enough babies, enough of them will make it. The K strategists have very few offsprings, but they have good parental care, and most survive to adulthood, like humans, elephants, some of the larger mammals that way, as opposed to fish, which just lay 50,000 eggs and swim away, or even mice, which can have 8, 10, 12 little babies in a litter and have a number of litters a year. They're just trying to make lots and lots of offspring and hope that a few of them grow up to be adults. Symbiosis is another way that species interact. It's a relationship that is close and permanent between uh, organisms of different species living together. The little fish that swim along with great white sharks and clean up after them, the little birds that live on rhinos' backs that clean the ticks off of them, the protists that live in the guts of termites, because termites surprisingly cannot actually digest wood. They need these little protists living in their stomachs that they can break down wood products into sugars, and then both live a good life. The protists are protected and are given a good supply of food constantly, and the termites get the sugar from the digestion that the protists put together. That's symbiosis, mutual living together and a benefit of both. And the other major way of living together is parasitism, which is a symbiotic relationship which a member of one species benefits at the expense of the other. Wood ticks, internal parasites that live inside many organisms, and they steal their food essentially from them, while giving the other member of this relationship no benefit or probably harm. In summary, ecology is the study of living and non-living parts of the biosphere. Looking at the organization, we have the ecosystem, living and non-living things, down to the community, which is just all the living things in a given area, then down to the population, a group of specific species within that community, and then finally down to the individual member of that population, the species.